Pay attention to the woman checking into the Riverfront Inn on the evening of March 14th. Her name is Cynthia Brennan. She's 29 years old, a paralegal from Columbus. She's clutching a leather briefcase and pulling a wheeled suitcase behind her. She looks tired but composed, professional. She's in Cleveland for a legal conference that starts the following morning. Room 412. 4th floor, corner unit with a partial view of the Cuyahoga River. Now, pay attention to the man who approaches the front desk 7 minutes later. His name is Martin Kowalski. He's 37, works in industrial supply distribution, and he's booked the same hotel for a trade show. The clerk assigns him room 414. 2 doors down from Cynthia Brennan. Martin asks about the hotel gym hours. He smiles. He seems friendly, unremarkable. Within 18 hours, hotel staff would receive their first noise complaint about room 412. Within 36 hours, they would find the bathroom door locked from the inside. This was not a legal conference. It was a trap. Cynthia Brennan had been planning this trip for 6 weeks. The Midwest Paralegal Association's annual summit was being held at the Cleveland Convention Center. 3 days of workshops, networking events, and continuing education credits she needed to maintain her certification. Her firm had paid for the registration. She'd booked the hotel room through the conference's recommended accommodations portal. Everything was legitimate. Everything was organized. She had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. Cynthia arrived at the Riverfront Inn at 6:47 p.m. on March 14th. Check-in was smooth. The lobby was busy with other conference attendees. She recognized a few faces from previous events. The normalcy of it all was complete. She took the elevator to the 4th floor, found her room, and spent the next hour unpacking and reviewing her conference schedule. At 8:15 p.m., she ordered room service, a Caesar salad and sparkling water. She wanted to be sharp for the morning keynote. The food arrived at 8:42 p.m. She ate while reading case briefs on her laptop. By 10 p.m., she was in bed. The alarm on her phone was set for 6:30 a.m. She had no idea Martin Kowalski was 2 doors down. She had no idea he'd been tracking her movements for 3 weeks. Martin Kowalski checked into room 414 at 6:54 p.m. He carried only a small duffel bag. No briefcase, no rolling luggage. He declined the bellhop's offer to help. He took the stairs instead of the elevator. When he reached the 4th floor, he paused in the stairwell. He waited. He listened. At 7:03 p.m., he entered his room and immediately began his preparations. Martin Kowalski was not in Cleveland for a trade show. He had never worked in industrial supply distribution. The name on his driver's license was real, but the employment history he'd given the hotel was fabricated. The credit card he'd used to secure the reservation was legitimate, but it belonged to an account he maintained specifically for situations like this. Martin Kowalski had been planning this for far longer than 6 weeks. The first noise complaint came at 11:47 a.m. on March 15th. A guest in room 410, directly below room 412, called the front desk. She reported loud thumping sounds, furniture being moved, something heavy hitting the floor. The noise had been going on for 20 minutes. It was disruptive. Could someone check on it? The front desk assured her they would send someone up. At 11:53 a.m., a housekeeper named Lorraine Vasquez knocked on the door of room 412. No answer. She knocked again. Still, nothing. She used her master key to open the door. The security latch was not engaged. She stepped inside. The room was empty. The bed was unmade. A laptop sat open on the desk. A half-empty water bottle stood on the nightstand. Cynthia's briefcase rested against the wall, but there was no sign of the guest. Lorraine checked the closet. She glanced into the bathroom. The bathroom door was closed, but not locked. She opened it. Empty. Lorraine assumed the guest had stepped out. She left a note apologizing for the disturbance and offering a complimentary beverage voucher. She closed the door and returned to her duties. The thumping sound stopped. The second noise complaint came at 4:32 p.m. This time, the complaint was from room 416, directly next door to room 412. The guest reported hearing muffled sounds through the wall. Not loud, not violent, just persistent, rhythmic, like someone moving furniture back and forth. It had been going on intermittently since early afternoon. The front desk sent Lorraine Vasquez back to the 4th floor. She arrived at room 412 at 4:38 p.m. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. She used her master key. The security latch was engaged. Someone was inside. Lorraine called through the door. "Housekeeping. Is everything okay?" No response. She called again. "Ma'am, I need to make sure you're all right." A voice came from inside. Female. Muffled. Barely audible. "I'm fine. Just not feeling well. Please don't disturb me." Lorraine hesitated. Hotel policy was clear. If a guest requested privacy, staff were to respect it, unless there was evidence of immediate danger. The voice had sounded weak, but it had sounded coherent. Lorraine noted the interaction in her log and left. The rhythmic sounds continued. By 9 p.m. on March 15th, Cynthia Brennan had missed all of her scheduled conference sessions. Her firm had tried calling her cell phone multiple times. The calls went to voicemail. Her supervisor sent 3 text messages. No response. This was not like Cynthia. She was meticulous. She was reliable. She always answered. At 9:47 p.m., Cynthia's supervisor called the Riverfront Inn and asked to be connected to room 412. The front desk transferred the call. It rang 6 times before going to the room's voicemail system. The supervisor left a message expressing concern and asking Cynthia to call back immediately. Cynthia never returned the call. The third noise complaint came at 6:15 a.m. on March 16th. The guest in room 410, the same woman who had complained the previous day, called the front desk again. She reported that the thumping had resumed at 5:30 a.m. It was now accompanied by a low, continuous sound. She described it as a hum, or possibly running water. It was faint but persistent. She had barely slept. The night manager, Daniel Frost, personally went to the 4th floor to investigate. He arrived at room 412 at 6:22 a.m. He knocked firmly. No answer. He knocked again and identified himself as hotel management. Still, no response. He used his master key. The security latch was engaged. He called through the door. "This is hotel management. We've had multiple noise complaints. I need to speak with you." Silence. He called again. "Ma'am, if you don't respond, I'm going to have to enter the room for a safety check." A voice came from deep inside the room. Female. Strained. "I'm in the bathroom. I'm sick. Please leave me alone." Daniel hesitated. The voice sounded wrong. Too quiet. Too forced. "Ma'am, I need to verify that you're okay. Can you open the door?" "I can't. I'm really sick. Please." Daniel made a decision. He radioed security. At 6:31 a.m., Hotel Security Officer Marcus Whitfield arrived on the 4th floor. Daniel Frost explained the situation. Multiple noise complaints, missed calls from the guest's employer, a voice from inside the room that sounded distressed. They needed to perform a welfare check. Marcus used a tool to disengage the security latch. The door swung open. The room was in disarray. The bed was unmade. Clothes were scattered across the floor. The desk chair was overturned. Cynthia's briefcase had been opened. Its contents spilled across the carpet. Her laptop was gone. The bathroom door was closed. Marcus approached it. He knocked. "Hotel security, I'm coming in." He tried the handle. Locked. He knocked again. Harder this time. "Ma'am, I need you to open the door." A voice came from inside. Female. Weak. Barely a whisper. "I can't." Marcus stepped back. He looked at Daniel. Daniel nodded. Marcus kicked the door. It took 3 attempts before the lock splintered and the door swung inward. Cynthia Brennan was sitting on the floor of the bathroom, her back against the tub. Her wrists were bound with zip ties. Her ankles were bound the same way. A strip of duct tape covered her mouth. Her eyes were wide with terror. She was alive. Barely. Cleveland Police Department arrived at the Riverfront Inn at 6:47 a.m. Detective Calvin Shaw took command of the scene. Paramedics worked to free Cynthia from her restraints, while Shaw secured the room as a crime scene. Cynthia was dehydrated, exhausted, and unable to speak coherently. She was transported to Metro Health Medical Center for evaluation. Shaw began his investigation immediately. The room showed signs of a struggle. Furniture had been moved. Personal items were missing. Cynthia's laptop, her phone, her wallet, but her briefcase and conference materials were still there. This wasn't a robbery. Shaw examined the bathroom. The zip ties were industrial grade. The duct tape was standard hardware store variety. There were no fingerprints on the smooth surfaces. Whoever had done this had been careful. Shaw reviewed the hotel's security footage. The cameras covered the lobby, the elevators, and the hallway entrances on each floor. But they did not cover the individual hallways where the rooms were located. The footage showed Cynthia entering the hotel at 6:47 p.m. on March 14th. It showed her taking the elevator to the 4th floor at 6:51 p.m. After that, she disappeared from view. The footage showed Martin Kowalski entering the hotel at 6:54 p.m. It showed him walking past the elevators toward the stairwell. After that, he also disappeared. Shaw ran Martin Kowalski's name through the system. No criminal record, no outstanding warrants. The address on his registration matched a real apartment in Akron. The credit card was valid. Everything looked legitimate. Shaw requested a list of all guests checked in on the 4th floor. Martin Kowalski's name appeared. Room 414, 2 doors down from Cynthia Brennan. At 8:15 a.m., Shaw and 2 uniformed officers approached room 414. Shaw knocked. No answer. He knocked again and identified himself as police. Still nothing. Shaw contacted hotel management. They confirmed that Martin Kowalski had not checked out. His key card had last been used at 11:52 p.m. on March 15th to enter his room. Shaw obtained a warrant. At 9:03 a.m., hotel security opened the door to room 414. The room was empty. The bed had not been slept in. There were no personal belongings, no luggage, no toiletries. The room looked as if it had never been occupied. But the security footage showed Martin Kowalski entering with a duffel bag. Where was it? Shaw ordered a forensic team to process both rooms. At Metro Health Medical Center, Cynthia Brennan was slowly regaining her strength. She had been restrained for more than 30 hours. She was severely dehydrated and suffering from minor injuries, bruising on her wrists and ankles, a cut on her forehead where she'd struck the bathroom floor. But she was conscious. She was coherent. Detective Shaw arrived at the hospital at 10:30 a.m. Cynthia told him everything she could remember. She had gone to bed at 10 p.m. on March 14th. She woke to the sound of her hotel room door opening. She assumed it was housekeeping. She called out. No response. She sat up. A figure moved through the darkness. Before she could scream, a hand clamped over her mouth. A voice, male, calm, told her not to make a sound. She tried to fight. He was stronger. He forced her into the bathroom. He zip-tied her wrists and ankles. He taped her mouth. He told her he wasn't going to hurt her. He just needed time. Time for what? He didn't answer. He took her laptop. He took her phone. He took her wallet. Then he left, locking the bathroom door from the outside. She heard him moving around the room. She heard furniture being shifted. She heard typing. Hours passed. She couldn't tell how many. At some point, she heard a knock, a woman's voice. Housekeeping. Cynthia tried to make noise, but the duct tape muffled everything. The housekeeper left. More hours passed. She lost track of time. She was thirsty. She was terrified. Another knock, a different voice. Hotel management. Cynthia forced sound through the tape. She heard the man's voice from somewhere in the room, low, mimicking hers, telling them she was sick or telling them to leave her alone. Eventually, the man returned to the bathroom. He unlocked the door. He looked at her. He didn't say anything. He left again, locking the door behind him. She never saw his face. Shaw asked Cynthia if she could describe him. She said he was average height, average build. He wore gloves. He wore a dark jacket. His voice was calm, almost polite. But there was nothing polite about what he'd done. Shaw asked if she'd ever seen him before. Cynthia shook her head. She had no idea who he was. Shaw showed her a photo from the hotel registration records. Martin Kowalski's driver's license photo. Cynthia stared at it. Her hands began to shake. That's him. The forensic team made their breakthrough on March 17th. They processed room 414 and found traces of adhesive residue on the desk. Someone had mounted equipment there, likely a laptop. They found fibers from a duffel bag in the closet. They found a single fingerprint on the bathroom faucet. The print matched Martin Kowalski's driver's license records. But Martin Kowalski had vanished. Shaw ran a deeper background check. The apartment in Akron existed, but it had been vacant for 3 months. The landlord had never heard of Martin Kowalski. The credit card was tied to an account opened 6 months earlier with forged documents. The driver's license was real, but the personal information was fabricated. Martin Kowalski was a ghost. Shaw expanded the investigation. He requested records from the conference's hotel booking portal. He discovered that room 412 had been requested specifically. The booking had been made using Cynthia Brennan's name and credit card information, but the IP address that made the booking did not match Cynthia's home or office. Shaw traced the IP address. It led to a public library in Akron. He reviewed the library's security footage. On January 23rd, 6 weeks before the conference, a man matching Martin Kowalski's description had used a public computer for 47 minutes. The timestamps matched the booking transaction. Martin Kowalski had been planning this for weeks. But why Cynthia Brennan? Shaw dug deeper. He examined Cynthia's social media accounts. Her Facebook page was private, but her LinkedIn profile was public. It listed her employment history, her professional certifications, and her attendance at previous paralegal conferences. It mentioned the upcoming Cleveland Summit. Shaw ran a search for other women who had attended similar conferences. He found 3. All of them had reported thefts in the past year. Laptops, phones, wallets. All of them had been staying at hotels near conference venues. All of them reported feeling like someone had been in their rooms while they were out. None of them had been physically harmed. None of them had reported being restrained. Cynthia Brennan was the first. The pattern was escalating. Shaw issued a warrant for Martin Kowalski's arrest on charges of kidnapping, assault, theft, and identity fraud. He alerted law enforcement agencies across Ohio and neighboring states. He released Kowalski's photo to the media. The response was immediate. On March 19th, a woman in Pittsburgh called the tip line. She recognized the photo. She'd met a man matching that description at a hotel bar in February. He'd been friendly, charming. He'd asked about her work. She was an accountant attending a tax seminar. She'd given him her business card. 2 days later, her laptop had been stolen from her hotel room. On March 20th, another woman called from Indianapolis. Same story. Hotel bar, friendly conversation, stolen laptop. On March 21st, a third woman called from Columbus. She'd met Martin Kowalski at a coffee shop near the convention center. He'd complimented her conference badge. They talked for 15 minutes. The next morning, her phone was gone. Shaw compiled the reports. Martin Kowalski wasn't just targeting Cynthia Brennan. He was targeting professional women traveling alone for conferences. He was identifying them, tracking them, and stealing their devices. But with Cynthia, something had changed. He hadn't just stolen. He'd restrained her. He'd held her captive. Shaw needed to find him before he escalated again. The break came on March 24th. A patrol officer in Toledo noticed a man matching Martin Kowalski's description at a bus station. The man was purchasing a ticket to Detroit. The officer approached. The man ran. The chase lasted 3 blocks. Officers tackled him outside a convenience store. They found a duffel bag containing 4 laptops, 3 phones, and multiple sets of identification documents, all belonging to different women. The man in custody was not Martin Kowalski. His real name was Eugene Talbot. He was 41 years old. He had a criminal record dating back to 2009. Fraud, identity theft, burglary. He had served 2 prison sentences. He'd been released 18 months earlier. Eugene Talbot had created the Martin Kowalski identity specifically for targeting conference attendees. Detective Shaw arrived in Toledo at 7 p.m. The interrogation began at 7:30 p.m. Talbot said nothing for the first 2 hours. His lawyer advised him to remain silent. Shaw presented the evidence: the hotel records, the surveillance footage, the stolen devices, the fingerprint. Talbot stared at the table. Shaw told him about Cynthia Brennan, how she'd been found zip-tied in a locked bathroom, how she'd been held captive for more than 30 hours, how she'd thought she was going to die. Talbot's expression didn't change. Shaw leaned forward. He asked one question. "Why did you restrain her? The others, you just took their things and left. What was different about Cynthia Brennan?" Talbot looked up. For the first time, he spoke. She woke up. Eugene Talbot confessed to 17 thefts across 6 states over the past year. He had perfected his system: identify professional women attending conferences, learn their schedules, book rooms in the same hotels, and use cloned key cards to enter their rooms while they were at events. He would take laptops, phones, and any cash or cards he could find. He sold the devices online. He emptied the bank accounts. Then he moved to the next city. It was efficient. It was low risk. It was profitable. But Cynthia Brennan had woken up. Talbot had entered her room at 11:34 p.m. on March 14th, using a cloned keycard he'd created from hotel security data he'd hacked 3 days earlier. He expected her to be asleep. She was. But when he opened the door, it creaked. She stirred. She sat up. He panicked. He couldn't let her see him. He couldn't let her call for help. So he restrained her. He locked her in the bathroom. He took what he needed. Her laptop had client case files he thought might be valuable. Her phone had banking apps. Her wallet had credit cards. Then he spent the next several hours trying to decide what to do. He couldn't let her go. She'd seen him. She could identify him. But he didn't want to hurt her. That wasn't part of his system. So he waited. He monitored the door. He answered when housekeeping knocked, mimicking Cynthia's voice. He bought himself time to think. Eventually, he realized he couldn't stay. The hotel staff were getting suspicious. Cynthia's employer was calling. He was out of options. He left through the stairwell at 2:17 a.m. on March 16th. He took the duffel bag with the stolen devices. He walked to the bus station and bought a ticket to Toledo. He assumed Cynthia would be found within hours. He was right. Shaw asked Talbot why he didn't just run after the first theft. Why did he keep targeting women at conferences? Talbot shrugged. It was easy. Eugene Talbot was charged with 17 counts of burglary, 1 count of kidnapping, 1 count of aggravated assault, and multiple counts of identity fraud and theft. He was held without bail. The trial began on September 9th, 2025. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: surveillance footage, forensic data, testimony from 17 victims. Cynthia Brennan took the stand on September 12th. She described waking to find a stranger in her room. She described the zip ties cutting into her wrists. She described the hours of terror in the locked bathroom. The defense argued that Talbot had not intended to harm anyone. His actions with Cynthia were the result of panic, not premeditation. He had a history of untreated mental health issues. He had grown up in poverty. He had made mistakes, but he was not a violent predator. The prosecution countered with one line: panic doesn't explain 36 hours of captivity. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. On September 16th, they returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. Eugene Talbot was sentenced to 23 years in federal prison. Cynthia Brennan returned to work in May 2025. She completed her paralegal certification. She testified before a cybersecurity task force on the dangers of digital identity theft targeting conference attendees. Her testimony led to new security protocols at major hotel chains, enhanced keycard encryption, mandatory security camera coverage in all hallways, and immediate welfare checks for guests who missed scheduled events. The conference industry implemented new safety guidelines. Attendee information is no longer publicly accessible on conference websites. Hotel room numbers are not printed on registration materials. Security training for hotel staff now includes recognizing signs of potential abduction or coercion. Cynthia still travels for conferences. She still stays in hotels, but she carries a portable door lock. She checks her room before settling in. She trusts her instincts. She survived. That's what matters most. The Riverfront Inn installed security cameras in all hallways on March 30th, 2025. Room 412 was taken out of service for 3 weeks while investigators completed their work. When it reopened, hotel management quietly removed it from online booking systems. Guests can still request it, but they rarely do. The leather briefcase Cynthia carried that night sits on a shelf in her office. She never uses it for work anymore, but she keeps it. A reminder that normalcy is fragile, that safety is never guaranteed, that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is wake up.